Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. You already know who it is and who it ain't. Let me just go ahead and get right to it. I'm now listening to the Lapeef live stream from July 22nd. And the funny thing is that while this was going on, I was traveling. I think while that live stream was going on, I was in the process of going from one airport to the other so that I could get back to where I live and work and rejoin my wife. I'm listening to Ameerah Exiled. Ameerah, right now I'm an hour and 11 minutes and 57 seconds into that live stream. I want to tell you this, Ameerah. I saw another video of you on another server, let's say. I'm not going to say which one it was. And you were getting on an African-American woman who was talking about, maybe it was CRT, maybe not. I don't really know what critical race theory is. But you were telling white people to defend themselves and not take this stuff from black people. And this is after you so astutely defended functional cultures on the Lapeef Let's Talk show. And I haven't even gotten all the way through it yet. I want to explain something first off to African-American men who are red pill aware. She and Daniel Hakikachu are a problem. They have everything right when it comes to gender. It turns out when it comes to race, they're just like white conservatives. They're on this platform about and seem to be red pill aware because of the same reason that white non-Muslim Republicans are on it. See, this is what happens when people that are not white call themselves white, and when Muslims who are white forget that they have been kicked out of their racial community. This is what happens when that happens. See, Daniel Hakikachu became Muslim, as far as I understand. So that means that while he is genetically white, he's been kicked out of that white community. They don't accept him anymore. Omar Lee understood that. And it was such a heavy burden on him, he wound up apostating from Islam for a while. It was a heavy burden. It wasn't the only burden he bore psychologically, but there were others. That was one of them, though. So I want you brothers to understand something. You're going to see these white identifying women, and Lebanese do call themselves white, claiming the faith to a certain extent, but not full on. And then when they understand the problems with the gender in the West, then we want to cheer for them. And I understand that, because when it came to that, she has been right so far in the 1 hour and 11 minutes and 57 seconds I've listened, and I got more to do. But understand this, when it comes to race, they are enemies. Now, the African-American woman in some video to which Ameerah the Exiled Lioness, as she calls herself, was reacting was not always on point. There are bigger fish to fry than what kind of shampoos and hair conditioners hotels provide for their guests by default. That was some unnecessary small detail. I really don't care about all that touchy-feely leftist liberal reaction to racism itself either. But understand, white supremacy is the only real form of racism in effect in the world today. And it is a religion, and many Muslims follow it too. Now, there was a time amongst the Muslims when there have always been Caucasians who have accepted Islam, and they left the Caucasian community, or communities, I should say. They were outcast amongst their people. There was a clear understanding. They don't belong to their people no more. Their people ain't claiming them, because when they accept Islam, they accept the equality of people by default, regardless of race. Now, inequality is based on moral decisions you make. There is inequality amongst people in Islam. However, it's not something we're never going to really know 100% how inferior or superior somebody else is, because you'll never know everything about someone else's ranking in the eyes of God. But we do admit, and we know already, that God can see the inequalities in people. We can't see them except a little bit. We understand this. This is a part of our faith too. Everybody ain't equal. But the law applies equally to everyone. The standards are the same for everyone, except according to disability. Now we have that. Here's where the issue comes in. We know that the oppressor has a special station. The oppressor is exceptionally immoral according to either of our religions. If you are a Christian, if you are a Jew, if you are a Hindu, if you are a Buddhist, atheists understand this naturally. We have this built in. The oppressor is not the equal of his or her victim. Maybe in other things, but in the manner of their oppression, which we can see, that's clear cut. The oppressor's wrong. The victim's At least the victim's not as wrong as the oppressor. That's the very worst that the victim gets to be in that situation. That's why it is that if I leave my car running with the keys in it, run in the store and come out and someone drives the car off and steals it, they still stole the car. So you can say I'm a dummy, but that's the criminal. Even in a case like that where I'm stupid for leaving my keys in the car unlocked while I'm running. Even in that case, I'm just stupid, but I'm not a thief. That ninja's a thief. That's an oppressor. He goes and wears handcuffs and sits in the cell when they catch his dumb behind. I suffered enough when I came out and saw the car was gone. That's the problem. You can say what you want about what black folks were doing back in Africa. Black folks in Africa, again, if they weren't united and they were so diverse, that means different groups of black people were doing different things. So how did everyone that get kidnapped or got kidnapped? Whether it was by another black person, whether it was by a white person, or whether it was by a group of both, whatever the case, how did everyone that got kidnapped and taken across the Americas, most of whom died, most of the survivors of whom wound up dying in the New World prematurely, all of whom got traumatized due to deserve this trauma? Nothing but be black. Best believe whatever black folks were doing morally or immorally in Mama Africa when it got destabilized from the coast going inland, by both races actually, whatever they were doing is not the reason that Europe did what it did to destabilize the coast and then force coastal Africans as proxies to go into the interior and destabilize it. And yes, the roles that many Africans played in this were forced. If you did not accept their weapons in exchange for people, you became the people in exchange for whom your enemies got weapons. That's how it worked. The Europeans knew what they were doing when they did this. They are not our equals. Hands down. Ameerah, the sooner you realize this, the smarter you'll be, because see, other brothers are cheering you on, and I'm going to continue cheering you on with regards to this, morally speaking. But you still got that white supremacist in you because one, you think your people are accepted as white. No, they're not. Number two, you think whites have some right to defend themselves from the things that people say about, from the things that non-whites say about them. They don't. Individual whites have the right to say things in defense of themselves because of what they did not do. But the collective has no right to speak in its own defense. That's how guilty they are. That's why your country got colonized by France and you never colonized France. You are not like them, but you're also not like us because you've chosen to identify with them. And I can tell because look, I don't care what you say everybody in Lebanon does. When none of the women in Lebanon wear the hijab, I get that, okay, but you're not in America not wearing the hijab on camera because the women back in Lebanon don't wear it. A lot of them actually do wear the hijab. You're in America not wearing the hijab on camera because white women don't do it. It's the same reason why many Arabs smoke. Arab men don't smoke because they saw some black people doing this on movies back in the day, decades ago. They smoke because white people were smoking in movies in the 1950s and 60s. So you can sit up here and accept the proper gender arrangement. Men should not have to pay the cost for someone else to be the boss. Especially, men should not have to pay the cost for women to be the boss when women don't even want to stay with men over whom they could possibly be a boss while refusing to pay the cost. You seem to get that. But when it comes to race, don't you ever act like somehow whites are being attacked. Whites are being talked about. One thing that Courtney Michelle was right about was that your people have a father-mucking problem. Now, the Arab Christians, I'm not even going to address them You identified yourself as Muslim. The Muslims have no business in the Arabic-speaking world calling black people Abd or Abid, and then they ain't got no insults for white folks. What I can understand and what I appreciate about living surrounded by Arabs is that Arabs are not violent and they're not dangerous to black people. That is why I can tolerate living here in an Arabic-speaking nation. That's the reason why I can deal with it. And some say, well, yeah, you know, black, you're black, but you're also American. That makes a difference. Well, that might make a difference in the salary when it comes to certain jobs. That is true. But in terms of how I'm generally, no, not really. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't. But what I'm getting at is that when it comes to safety, there are many Nigerians living in Gulf nations, and they're not mistreated. Now, people may not trust them because they're Nigerian, not because they're African, but because they're Nigerian, but they're not mistreated. Many Sudanese are living here, and they're safe. People do not mess with them. Maybe they invite them for dinner, maybe not, I don't know. But people do not mess with Sudanese. They trust them, ironically, but they don't mess with them. This is known. They have a reputation for being extraordinarily trustworthy with their promises and with their words. You can go to one, if he is a shepherd, you could go to one of them and you could say, hey man, let me buy some of these livestock. Let me buy some of this livestock. And that man will say, well, I mean, you could buy it, but I'm not the owner. I'm the shepherd. So I can't negotiate its price. And you cannot bribe them to give you some of the livestock. And I know because I saw the video of it. They tried that, man. They were like, look, your boss that owns the sheep is not here. He can't see what's going on. You can tell him a wolf got the sheep and the money's yours. And that man said, no, God is watching. He'll see it. I'm not going to get away with that. When the owner comes, you can negotiate the price with him. It's up to him. So I appreciate the fact that black folks are not in danger here. But this does not mean, Ameerah, that you get to sit up on a high horse and talk about why you black people are born here and you don't take advantage of the opportunities that this country gives you. It doesn't give us that many opportunities. You're not going to face job discrimination, Ameerah, and you can talk about how your family came with nothing. That's cap. More than likely that is. Your family came with something that our families did not go to the U.S. with, and that was a plan to go there. A decision to go. We didn't even get to decide. That's why black folks are poor and behind in not only the U.S., but in Brazil, in Colombia. That's why you got white Britishers in Trinidad, which is a majority black nation, and they don't even have to work. Oh, they balling. I don't see white Jamaicans in the ghettos, in the slums and in the garrisons. I hardly even see Indian Jamaicans there. There is a color gradient when it comes to wealth, and it is almost worldwide without exception, almost. And you just happen to be pale enough to where you were allowed to go to the States, number one, when the men in your family did work minimum wage jobs, which they did. I believe that part. They were allowed to save and move up. When you were black and you start making enough, and that's if you're black American or black African, you start moving up and making enough, you get a knock on your door. And they're wearing badges. Federal badges. I know some Somali men who ran some successful businesses in the United States had this happen to them. They were running everything legally, but they got knocks on their door and they were told that this was not appreciated. They were told that they hadn't paid enough in taxes, or they were told that they had employees that were turning in narcotics money. Why would they be dealing narcotics and turning the money into the company? Things like that. They were told all these things. They were harassed until they left the United States. One man that I know knows about 3 of them. The bottom line comes down to this: when you are a heterosexual black man and you start making money, and ironically, we actually tend to save more money than black American women who face job discrimination, but a hell of a lot less than we do. We still tend to save more, but the point I'm making is that when we start making a good bit of money, something comes in and interferes if it does happen. My father collected half to a third of what white physicians in his area made over the years. He didn't know this for decades because people don't discuss their salaries. Found this out late in the game. Yes, white folk are a fucking problem, Ameerah. Get that through your thick skull. So the African American sister's making some dumb points. You could, with the right response to that, and there is no other response. Just like Islam is the correct religion, and we believe in that, I'm gonna tell you what the right and the only right response is to say to her, you're focusing on the small things. There is systemic oppression of your people. Yes, there is systemic oppression. And frankly, your men are the ones who are most qualified to talk about it. We're not in chains anymore. Don't talk about what's not happening to us anymore, because frankly, these things are still happening. Don't come at me and retort against me about any of the stuff that's not going on anymore that used to go on. The bullwhips, the chains, the enslavement, because in some other form, it is still happening. And officers are still targeting black men. It is still going on. That's still happening. I just spent 5 weeks in the States, first time in 2 years. I didn't get bothered one time. I didn't get pulled over one time. But I can tell you that from people that I know, having this happen to, having them being pulled over a lot of times, frequently, a lot of times, searched for nothing. Having them go through this stuff so many times, let me tell you what happens, Ameerah. They tell us the stories, and when a cop gets behind me in traffic, I get very scared. I now live in one of the Arabic-speaking nations, and that's where I am right now. And when I drive here and I see a cop car, I get scared, but it's only for a second. And I remember, if I don't do anything against traffic laws, they ain't looking for me. The only time I ever have to show a cop my license is when they have a checkpoint and they're checking everybody. Usually, hey, let me go. See, that's what goes on here. We're still going through it. We are not behind because of us, per se. We're not behind just because of the culture. The culture's only really held us truly behind. The culture itself has only held us behind more than the outside environment for maybe 3 decades. And in all honesty, a lot of black men are beginning to question that and throw the culture aside. That's why you got the support you got from black men on the Lapeef show. Because we're checking this and we're saying, we're done with this. Boom Shika wants to protect that ignorant stuff. She by herself. That's what you saw. So we're not even holding on to a culture that holds us back like that. I can't say the same for your people, man. I can't say that. The tribalism, that's not really a big issue over there where you live, where your parents came from. Fortunately, it's still a big issue here. Yeah, it holds them back. Because see, before you want to sit up and say, well, how come you black folks who were born here and been here 400 years don't have X, Y, and Z? Before you say that, let me ask this. How long was your family, how many thousands of years was your family in Lebanon? And why is Lebanon the crap hole country from which people run? Why was it recently? I understand it's probably developing now and getting better, but why is it that you still have the same political instability? Haven't everybody learned to live together in harmony after all this time? I mean, we could sound just as stereotypically stupid and ask these questions about your nation even after the problems have gone. You are not only are your people not better, but Lebanese, you're not even our equals. Just for considering yourselves to be of the same race that craps on you when no black folks are in the room. Trust you me, if nobody was darker than you, Ameerah, you'd be the one they call nigger. You sounded just like a white Republican conservative the way you went on an African American woman, and I'm not even one of her fans. I don't know who she is, and I think her points were childish, but you really didn't go in on that so much. You mostly went in on the fact that she was talking about oppression and discrimination at all. That's really what you went in on. Well, of course, we're going to talk about that. You were talking about how, the shaitan whispers in the backs of the minds of women, you missed the cock carousel. You were right about that. Who the hell do you think whispered in the backs of everybody's minds a beauty standard? and other ideas about lighter skin and darker skin. Just the beauty standards. That's actually a legitimate complaint that black women have outside of the United States. In general, that's actually a legitimate one, especially in your neck of the woods. I know, because women that aren't considered black, they're just dark, don't get married as early and don't collect the same dowries from what Arabs have been saying. So, you watch how you talk to us. Wa alaikum salam, sweetheart, almost done. You keep your mouth shut, and you remember this. Just because you write about gender does not mean you have a clue about race. Let me catch you saying something like that again. Then I'm going to call your very faith into question. Because your ideas come from a satanic religion called white supremacy. The whole time you claiming Islam. And you ain't the only one I'm going to get on like this. You're just the one I caught right now. If you cut it out, you stop this mess, you won't hear anything like this from me again, and you'll find me to be in your corner if you make the necessary corrections. Just to be fair. To the rest of you all, thanks for listening. Y'all know the drill. Black heart, black mind, black out. Just because she don't like it. I'll do the rest later. Until next time.